I have just made I'm sorry, I just had a little glitch here, but it's taken care of. So we are recording this teleconference. I do want to remind everybody, and the recording will be available tomorrow at noon, and forgive me for jumping back in with that. So Kweethai, I'm so glad that you're here. And here's where I want to get right into this, is that you have a unique way of applying your science and academic background to the practical applications of hypnotherapy. And I understand that it brings about amazing results in your clients. How does storytelling fit in with the other aspects of your work?
Well, storytelling is the oldest form of teaching. I come from a teaching background, and I think first of all, when clients are in my office, the first session can take as long as, the longest session I have done is 16 hours in one session.
Wow.
I see somebody's jaw just dropped. I work in a unique way in that when I work a case, the client has to sign on and be committed to do 20 hours of work with me. I don't do single sessions. And in that 20 hours, the client is committed to the work and is ready to do transformation work. So the first day is one very long day with me. It ranges from usually between 6 to 10 hours. And the longest session I've done was 16 hours.
Wow.
So during that time, the client is engaged in very intense conversations with me. So people say, how do you sit there for 8 hours talking to one person? And if you know, in hypnotherapy, we are in hypnotic time, and 8 hours go very quickly. So telling stories help the client feel more comfortable, because it is not psychotherapy. Sometimes people come in and they jump right into their own stories, and it is difficult to expose everything all at once. And so I engage in conversations and I tell them stories, what I call case stories, and help them find scaffoldings to hang their own stories on. So I started doing that way from the beginning. This is my 14th year of full-time practice, and I've been telling stories ever since.
Great. So you're going to be doing a 2-day workshop on how to tell stories that help clients. That's quite intriguing. So tell us a little bit more. What led you to start using storytelling in your work?
Well, it starts off with to make the client feel comfortable. They come into my office. My office is very comfortable. It's more homey. I have a couch, and they come in, they take their shoes off, and we sit down, and I bring in a tray of tea, and we sit down and talk stories. And storytelling is as old as one could remember. I think the Bible has many stories. I think Jesus was a very good teacher, and most of his teachings come in the form of stories, as in many other old teachers, we teach from stories. And as children, we learn best when grandmothers tell us stories. Mm-hmm. So somehow in the content, in the telling of the story, the client finds places to identify with the stories. And so the day begins, and we tell stories.
Your program description mentions intuitive stories. What is an intuitive story?
Okay, and here's the art of storytelling. I started telling stories, and then I realized that there's a lot to learning how to tell a story. And I took many workshops in storytelling. I went to storytelling festivals. I went to storytelling workshops, and find that there is an art to storytelling. But in my office, when I talk about an intuitive story, is I sit down with a client, just like I'm having a chat with all of you right now, and somehow I tune into what the client is experiencing, what the client is feeling. I would tell the client, I say, now, it's one long day with me. It can be fun. It can be scary. And it's also very comfortable in that I not only have a tray of tea all day long, I also feed you lunch, and nobody goes hungry in my office. And so as we are carrying on with this very comfortable, intensive conversation, I would tell the client, it would appear as if I'm rude sometimes, but it is not because I have bad manners, because that is the nature of my work, is confrontive. So I'm talking story right now. 10% of the energy I focus on listening to what you're telling me. The other 90% of my attention is focused on what you're not telling me, while you're telling me a story. As we carry on this, what I call a hypnotic conversation, we engage in what I would call an intuitive story. So a client is talking, and all of a sudden I see an energy shift. Mm-hmm. And that's a whole other conversation if you would ask me what I mean by energy shift. And in the workshop, I will show you how we do in observing an energy shift in a client and be able to maneuver and structure a story to help the client open up. In our work, we use a lot of metaphors. Mm-hmm. Metaphors are great structures for stories. Somehow it's a lot easier to talk about somebody else's story than your own. But somehow in the process of talking about someone else's story, you expand and make your own bud of a story blossom. So the notion of intuitive story is I would be looking at you. It's great that I can see you, Michael. If I am talking a story with you, all of a sudden I see there might be tears coming out of your eyes, or tears may appear behind the eyes. In the workshop, I will show you how to pay attention to tears behind the eyes, and also how to read a client's body language. Sometimes I would have a client who say, oh, everything is just all right. And then the frown gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And I said, really? So it is obvious that something is stirring up in a client, but she's not. I'm going to use the pronoun she because it's inclusive of all the he's in the room. He's in the word she. It's not because I'm biased to females. I get a lot of male clients in my office as well. So as I am talking about a case story, which we'll talk a little bit more down the road, the person can identify, oh, maybe if he can heal that way, maybe I can also. And suddenly the ice is broken, so to speak, in the room, and the client becomes more comfortable in opening up and really diving into the core of their issues. So storytelling is very powerful. It's especially wonderful with children. As we all know, children love stories. And we're all children, even though we get older, because we all love stories. So that part is the intuitive story.
Okay, so you mentioned something about case stories a minute ago. First of all, how do you differentiate between a case history and a case story? I know that there's a difference here.
Okay, now bear in mind, some of us tuning in. I see some people from Malaysia have tuned in. Welcome. A case history, so to speak, as in science or in psychotherapy, we are actually citing an accurate version of a case that you have noted. A case history, however, you don't have to have all the details of the facts. First of all, when a client comes to my office, they have to sign a contract with me. It's a 4-page agreement. And the last page, there is an item, a box. They have to check whether or not they give me permission to brag about them. And they also have a box that they check whether they want to be identified in that story. I have clients who absolutely insist I must say their name correctly. And I have clients that say, you can tell my story, but I don't want people to know it's about me. So when we are citing a case story, I'm telling the client that I actually worked on cases like that, but I'm not identifying the client. And so sometimes in order to protect client identity, I have to shift the descriptors a little bit because somebody would know, oh, that's Michael Watson she's talking about, right? Mm-hmm. If I have a detailed description about characteristics that are particular to you. So in constructing a case story, I want to make sure that the relevant items that make the story relevant is there. Mm-hmm. Well, I will use my artistic license to make sure that I manipulate some descriptors to protect the identity of the client who has checked off, please don't identify me. Mm-hmm. So that is what I mean by a case story. And I simply would say to my client, I'm telling a story to, I said, now, this is a case story. So then I am safe in saying that. And by the way, we are not bound by HIPAA, although we have a professional obligation to protect the confidentiality of our clients. So in this way, I am safe to say, well, this is what happened.
Yes. Now, I've been hearing in the news the last couple of days the new phrase, alternative facts.
No, I simply say case story. I said the pertinent facts pertaining to the case are true. However, there are some manipulation of descriptors to protect the identity of the client.
Yes. Now, do you explain the meaning? So with metaphors and things, I know sometimes they can be very, very cryptic, and people will be wondering, well, why did she tell me that story, or what was this supposed to be about, or what was I supposed to learn from that? Do you explain the meaning of a story, or do you just allow your clients to draw their own conclusions?
A little bit of both. It depends on the context and the client. Mm-hmm. Sometimes, and that is where you have to be not only culturally sensitive, you also have to pay attention to the how do I say, the socio-cultural economic context of the client to make it relevant to the client. For example, let me see if I can tell you a story. All right. This week I was at a professional licensed mental health therapist meeting where I told a story about the notion of forgiveness. And the whole room of 30-some therapists just went quiet. I raised my hand and I said, I don't believe in forgiveness. And the jaws dropped. And everybody said, what? And there's another time where I said, I don't believe in hope, abandon hope. And they said, what? And so I said, well, I had a client, and I'm now telling you a client story. This woman came to my office, having seen those multiple therapists all of her life. This woman was sexually abused by her father since she was 5 years old. And when she was old enough, she ran away from home and had multiple bad relationships with men who abused her. Mm-hmm. And so when she finally showed up in my office, she was 40-some years old. And she said to me, please don't tell me I have to forgive my father. And I said, really? What happened? And she said, I've been in therapy most of my adult life. I have seen 5 different psychotherapists. And each one of my therapists told me that I have to forgive my father. And so she said, no. And she got very upset. She said, no, I can't forgive that SOB, quote unquote. I was a child. And he was my father. He was supposed to protect me. Mm-hmm. And yet he did this horrible thing to me. And she says, I cannot forgive him. I will not forgive him. I don't want to forgive him. And she looked at me and she started to cry. And she said, I hope you're not like one of those other therapists to tell me that I cannot heal if I don't forgive my father. Now, I tell you, all of you hypnotherapists out there, whichever school you've been to, did they tell you what to respond, how to respond to a case like that? Yeah. And I looked at the client, and all I could feel was compassion. And I looked at her, I said, well, nobody needs to do what they don't want to do in my office unless they choose to. So I said, give me a moment. And when I don't have an answer, I close my eyes and I ask for an intuitive story. Mm-hmm. And I connect with the divine and I said, look, you got to help me out here. What am I going to say to this poor woman? And she's looking at me in tears. And she said, does that mean I'm going to be here forever? Am I doomed to this living hell forever? I'm tired of going to therapists. Help me. So I took a moment and I opened my eyes and I said, no, you don't have to forgive him if you don't want to. And then I said to her, do you believe in God? And she looked at me, and I do require all my clients to believe in God. I don't care what religion you come from, because if you don't believe in God, it's going to cost you more. I simply tell them that, because it's going to take a lot more work to get you there. So I said, do you believe in God? And she said, yes, I do. Now, nobody taught me how to say this. Somehow, intuitively, I put out my left hand. I was seated to her right. I said, would you be willing to let God do the forgiving for you? You don't have to do it if you don't want to. Can you hand it over? I put out my left hand like that, and she put her right hand on mine. And I said, just put it here. Put it here. And tears flowed from her eyes, a different kind of tears. Earlier, it was tears of despair. Now these are tears of joy, knowing that there is a chance to heal. And in that moment, I know healing has begun. So I said, now, relax. Close your eyes. Now, that was a true case. That was a case story. I actually worked on her. But this story I have told over and over again to many clients in different situations when they are in despair and they have no faith. Mm-hmm. And it gives them not so much a sense of hope as a sense of trust that if it happened to that lady, perhaps there is chance that I can heal also. So when I explain to clients, I don't believe in hope. I say hope is based on tomorrow. Hope is wishing for someone to do for you in a future time. I said, don't hope. Trust and act on it. Believe that you can make that change right this moment in real time, right now, and you don't have to hope. Now, in saying that, in telling that story, the client who hears the story, who is not the client who was the story, they find a sense of movement. They become a little less fearful. Mm-hmm. And our job really in the work we do is to help them alleviate fears, sure, to transform their fears into love. Mm-hmm. Then you know they are healing. So what stories can you tell? that will move their spirit, that will move their hearts, for them to put up their hand and say, yes, I'm ready to do something now. Help me.
Yes.
And so the story becomes a bridge for the client, where the client is sitting here and wanting to go over there. You create a story to gently allow the client to walk on that bridge and compassionately lead the client there. That's the intuitive case story.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Now, I think you've sort of answered the next question I was going to ask you in a variety of ways, but just to double check, because we all have different ways of working, and my gosh, you've got those marathon sessions that you're doing as well. So when in the process do you use storytelling? In other words, for example, some hypnotists will tell stories and then do hypnosis, or they'll do hypnosis and tell stories in a trance, or they'll have some other piece of work that they're going to do and they'll tell the story before or after it. Or how do you sort of organize that?
Well, you don't. At least I don't.
Mm-hmm.
A client would say, what are you going to do with me for one whole day? I said, I have no clue.
Yeah, good.
I said, I just know that if you could trust me in the process, the right thing will happen at the right time. Now, I believe in open eye trance, and I don't need to use, spin people around in a chair or use different. I actually went out and bought one of these TikTok things, watches, because somebody asked me, are you going to dangle the watch and hypnotize me? So I went to Walmart and paid $10 and bought one. So I have one in the office. I said, I can if it pleases you. We aim to please, right? So no, I believe that the moment the client steps into my office, he's already in open eye trance. Why? Because the pre-talk was already done. Actually, I'm doing a session on pre-talk in another conference a later part of the year. On when somebody calls me on the phone, by the time I'm finished with that conversation and they're ready to sign on with me, I've already done my pre-talk. I've convinced a client to sign up for 20 hours of work, and this year's fee is $8,000 before I see a client. So I've already done the screen. So they come in and they're really ready to work. And they step into my therapy room. The minute we start talking, they're already in trance. So then the conversation unfolds. And this is where in the workshop, I will show you how very intensely the things to watch for, the shifts in body, the shift in expression, the shift in energy. And so it's a very intense amount of work. And I say to people, the fees is not enough. You're buying 20 hours of my life very intensely, because I shut everything out and I'm all there in a few days that the client is there. So allowing the client to tap into her own stories, it becomes a very comfortable hypnotic conversation. And the client will start, oh, that reminds me. And then a story comes. And in the client, you're actually teaching the client to tell stories as well. And the client will start telling you a story. Now you pay attention to where the cues are coming from. How do you know what story to come out? Well, you don't. You just have to, if you're a musician, you learn the scales, but that's not music. Mm-hmm. Right? We learn the techniques, we learn the structures, we learn the sequences, but that's not music, that's not dancing. You learn the basic steps. So when you're actually executing, when you're actually doing this long conversation with the client, then you have to empty your vessel and you have to take the cues from the client, and you somehow know what stories will come out. It's quite magical. It's not magic, but it's quite magical.
Yes. Now, how do you know if a story is really having the effect that you want it to have? In real time.
2 words: you pay attention. as you're telling the story, you have to pay very close attention to the way the client is responding to your story. Now, I could see some faces as I am telling the story. I can see a few faces responding and reacting. Reacting is instant. Responding takes a little lag time because the client has to process through the emotion and then go through the prefrontal cortex to come up with a response. So all this time you're watching very intensely. And that's why I'm seated across from the client so I can see the client's full body and face. And that's why, again, I tell students I teach, don't ever read a script to a client because you would miss out 90% of the work if you do, if you're reading to a client. You must be reading the client, not reading to the client. So you pay very close attention to every shift in the face, every shift in the eyes. Sometimes you will see tears behind the eyes with no tears falling down the face. Sometimes it's just a twitch in micro muscle in the face, a little twitch in the lip, and you must catch that. A subtle shift in the energy of the client. And I would say, as the client, while I am telling the story to the client, as I said a little earlier, I'm also letting the client mimic me. I'm providing a mirror for the client. And therefore, the client is now learning, picking up very quickly how to tell a story to me without feeling that she has to totally bear everything. She's actually bearing her soul to me without realizing it by telling me a story. Yeah. And so we, on the other side, have to learn very carefully how to pick up the subtle differences. Now, clients and some people who are tuned in had experienced my work before, and you would notice and would tell the client ahead of time, as soon as we start the session, know that I would interrupt you in the middle of a sentence, and it's not because I have bad manners, it's because something shifted, and it is just the right moment to go in there and process that. Nice. So if somebody said something, oh, wow, I said, stop. Tell me again. And now I watch. Yeah. I watch for the nonverbals.
Very nice. Now, these are really great. I can't tell you how much I appreciate the detail that you're giving us in terms of how to think about these things. We're close to the time when we need to open up for questions. By the way, the clock is just flying by, so I want to pay attention to that. But there is one question that I think is really important. It's lovely for you to tell us a number of things that we can do, and we appreciate that. But I like to find out what not to do. That is, what are some things not to do when telling client stories?
Okay, number one, we do not read a story to a client, right? Number two, we don't want to talk at a client. Number three, you want to make sure that the stories are relevant. Otherwise, the client will say, what in the world is she talking about? We are talking about ducks here, and now she's talking about pineapples. You'll be surprised. You'll be surprised how sometimes things get a bit out of hand. And what is also very important in storytelling that we didn't touch, I'll just touch on it a little bit, is sharing personal stories. Personal stories are endearing, and it builds trust between you and the client. For example, if somebody is grieving and whatnot, and you have never experienced losing a loved one in death, and someone will say, well, you've never lost anybody. How would you know how it feels? And then you could share, yes, I have. And for example, I'll share the fact that a long time ago, in my previous marriage, I was very dear to my father-in-law then, and he was end-stage cancer, and he decided he wanted to end his life. And made it so I truly believed that I would find him. He put a shotgun in his mouth, and I found him. Mm. Now, at the appropriate moment, when I share something so personal, it builds trust between the client and me, because I trust them with my very personal story. Now, there is a very fine line, as I said, what not to say to a client. Know the difference between what is personal and what is private. So there's a whole subtle lines of stuff that we have to know about professional boundaries and personal boundaries.
And respectfully, I think it's probably important, and if you could comment on this, to know what's indulgent. You know, I think some people really like to tell their stories, even whether it's even the most important thing or most useful thing to do at the time.
Very good point, Michael. So here's the other caveat, is that don't get carried away. Remember, this is not about you.
Yeah.
All right, this is not about you.
Yeah.
It's all about
me. If it's about me, I'm doing the paying.
Yeah, this is the client. So always remember that the most important person in your session is the person in front of you.
You bet. You bet.
So everything that you say and everything that you do has to keep that in the first, in the middle, and the last. Mm-hmm. And so the stories have to be relevant, appropriate. If you're working with children, they have to be age appropriate, developmentally appropriate. The stories that you share with your clients have to be culturally sensitive, gender sensitive, whatever other factors you want to look at. And I find that one thing, it's always safe to laugh at myself. I don't need your permission to laugh at me. Yeah. So if I want to tell a funny story, I make me the person to be made fun of, and I'm totally safe.
Nice. Yes.
Make fun of the client.
Very nice. Listen, your workshop is going to be the 17th and the 18th, so it's 2 full days at the pre-conference at the in Daytona Beach, 17th and 18th of May. And what types of hands-on experience can participants expect in your workshop? What storytelling skills will you be teaching specifically?
Well, because it's a hands-on experience, and those of you who have been in my workshop, I'm very spontaneous, and we deal with what emerges. And so if you come to my workshop with something specific, I usually start the morning with intentions. What do you want to get out of it? And depending on who is there, you'll get a chance to take something home uniquely that you want to study. So what I would do is, in the beginning of the morning, I'm going to put on the board, everybody can also put in a card. You can sign up 3 things you want to learn to take home with you. And I'll do my best to cluster them into groups so that everybody will have something to take home. Nice. And since it's a workshop, I'm not expecting 100 people there. I'm going to make sure everybody has a chance to be in the hot seat, to dive right in and do. So the more you're willing to participate, the more you're going to take home with you. And I can tell you this, it's going to be 2 days of fun. Imagine having a lot of fun and taking something home useful, and making your sessions with your clients fun at the same time.
Great.
I mean, we can be ha-ha funny, but we're also dead serious about what we're doing.
Sure. All right. Well, listen, I want to give people a chance to ask their questions. So I need to kind of remind everybody how this works while we're still getting used to the new technology here. So for those of you who are on the computer, at the bottom of your screen, there's a little tab that says Participants. If you haven't clicked on that already, it will open up a window that has the names or phone numbers for those that are on the phone. It has who the participants are on the call. And at the bottom of that box, one of the options is Raise Hand. So if you're on the computer and you have a question, open that Participants box and find where it says Raise Hand on the bottom and click on that. So then I'll know that you have a question. And if you're on the telephone and you have a question, you can just dial *9 and I will know that your hand has gone up, and then we'll be able to call on you, and I'll open up your mic so that you'll be able to ask your question. it's a little complicated, but I know we've got some brave souls out here, and it takes them a minute to get underway. We're really looking forward to your program, Dr. Kweethai. And by the way, I hope you don't mind me pointing it out, but you sent me some information about your program, and it indicates that it's on May 10th and 11th. You really might want to change that.
Oh, okay.
because it would be really good to have you there.
I know why that got wrong. I'm actually speaking at a different conference in Minnesota.
Great. Well, Gloria has her hand in the air, so I am going to unmute you, Gloria, and your microphone is open now. So if you have a question, go ahead and ask.
Yes, when you're becoming aware that the changes are coming upon your client that you would like, do you kind of get a sense that the energy changes between you?
Between me and the client?
Well, when I say between you and the client, I mean when the client arrives with all their whatever, problems they have, right?
Yes.
My personal feeling is we all have a personal energy pattern.
Yes.
And you can either, and maybe when they arrive, you may feel it, or you may just feel the block because they're so, hidden, in protective dead energy in a way.
Right.
What I'm saying is, as you're working through with them, do you get that sense of the energy moving and changing? Not necessarily between you, but for them.
Okay, firstly, my whole center is energized before my client comes. I prepare, I clean, and I cleanse before the client comes. I meditate before I see every client to make sure that my poop is outside of the center or my junk is away and I am there. So the energy in the center and the therapy room and my office, when the client walks in, they're already walking into an energy that has been prepared for healing. And so whatever shifts that the client experiences will be supported by my energy field. Does that answer your question?
Oh, I love it. No, I love it.
Thank you, Gloria.
I love it. This is just really wonderful. Boy, I am going to make an intent to get to your workshop, even though I'm in a situation where it's not available now. I would really just love to be in that workshop because I love to tell stories, and I'd really like to make them beneficial.
Okay, great.
Great.
Thank you
so much.
All right, thanks, Gloria. So, anybody else have a question for Dr. Neill? Again, *9 if you're on your telephone is a way to let us know, or again, that participants box, raise your hand down there at the bottom of it should get you through to us. You handled that really well, Gloria. They don't ask a lot of questions. It's funny. I have.
See Catherine smiling. Looks like Catherine is hatching a question.
Oh.
Yeah, read faces. Can you unmute her?
She doesn't seem to want me to.
Okay, that's all right.
Oh, here's a couple hands now. And I'm sorry, ma'am, that I forgot your name. It is Emerentian online here. I have just unmuted you.
My name is Louise.
Hi, Louise.
Hi. My question is about, I am not a psychotherapist. I'm not a counselor. I'm a hypnotherapist. So when I hear the stories and the person opening themselves up so much to me, where do I draw the line between doing counseling and doing hypnosis?
Well, good counseling is hypnosis.
However, as non-therapists, non-psychotherapists, I don't know where should I draw the line?
Well, I'm not a psychotherapist, okay. And I'm a clinical hypnotherapist. My doctorate is in health education. I teach You don't have to say you're counseling. I'm teaching the client. I tell the client, I'm teaching you straight in your subconscious mind. I'm rewriting your software for you, with you. So I am not crossing any psychotherapy boundaries.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And we have one more. Jasper has his hand up, and Jasper, you've been unmuted, so go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. It's a great seminar. My question is, when this how a story, we don't need to talk. It's obviously for our clients. My question is, when you do interrupt them, when you see their body language, do you keep them? Is there ever a time frame where you'll get them off the actual story that they're telling, because it's actually doing them? It's not helping them. It's not helping them move on. And how do you get them back to the story that they were telling you once you discuss something with them?
Okay, Michael, did you get most of it?
I really didn't. I was trying to see if I could make an adjustment, and I hope that you were listening. Jasper,
okay.
Your bandwidth is a little low, so we heard some of it, and I'll let you just go ahead, Kweethai.
Go ahead and ask that question again, the last bit.
When you have interrupted one of your clients, is there ever a time where you will make them depart from the story that they're telling because it's actually moving them into muddled area, in fact, where they're kind of stalled, instead of bringing them up to a faster resolution on something that they have trouble with? I'm so sorry, my bandwidth is the problem today.
Okay, let me see. I've got pieces of it. I hope it is what you're asking for. What I heard is that when I interrupt a client's story, do I go back to help them to resolve the original piece of the story? Is that correct?
Yes. Ultimately, I guess so, yes.
Okay. Yes. All right. Sometimes it is appropriate to do so, and sometimes it is not appropriate to do so. So it depends on the context. And sometimes I interrupt because they're perseverating. They are going loop-de-loop in a stuck pattern, and I have to snap them out of it. And sometimes when I catch them in an energy shift, it seems like we need to go someplace else rather than stay in that place. And sometimes this is appropriate. I said, okay, something just happened here. I noticed when you said this sentence, your body tightened up and I see tears behind your eyes. Now, tell me more about this. Then it segues into the issue they really want to open up about but didn't know how. So giving them permission to just stop the story at this point and then cross this bridge now and see where you want to take us. Does that answer your question?
Oh, you know what?
Yes.
I may have.
You have to unmute Jasper.
I may have had to mute her again. Yes, there we go. I'm sorry, Jasper. You're unmuted again.
Jasper.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, that's what has happened with me, whereas sometimes it's best for one story that they have begun to actually do that interruption so that they can move on and get past something where they're meddled. Thank you so much.
Yes, Jasper, you're a very intuitive hypnotherapist.
Thank you.
Very good. Okay. So let's see. Any other hands in the air? It is coming that time. As a matter of fact, as I look at my clock, I see that we have run over by 3 minutes, and it doesn't seem that there are any other questions pending. So first of all, I want to remind everybody that this program has been recorded. And the recording will be posted on the ACT IMDHA forum tomorrow. For those of you who are not members and don't have access to the forum, I'll be happy to send you a link as well to the recording. And in order to get that, you will need to send me a note. So please do that. My email address is FL Hypno. Easy to remember. I'm in Florida and I do hypnosis. So flhypno@outlook.com, and just tell me that you'd like to have a link to the recording of this session, and I'll send that out to you tomorrow. So I also want to remind you all, you can get your CEUs by logging on to the appropriate website. Next week we will be talking with Sheila Granger about the virtual gastric band at this same time and same station. So please do join us then. And now, Kweethai, I just really want to tell you personally how much I appreciated it. You've done such a great job for us, and I think this will be a really useful talk for people. So sign up for the conference. Sign up for Kweethai's program. Thanks a lot, Kweethai.
Thank you. One moment, please. And I see some Asian members have logged in. For all our Chinese members who are logged in, Happy Chinese New Year. Happy New Year of the Rooster, and Happy New Year to all of you. See you in Daytona.
All right. Well, thanks everybody, and I'm gonna do the strangest thing here at the end. We'll just see what happens, because I'm gonna unmute everybody. It may be chaos, but if you want to shout out hellos or goodbyes or whatever it is, will be the time to do that. So
thank you so much.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kweethai. Thank you. That's a great workshop. Thank you. Thank you very much. It was wonderful to hear you. Thank you.
thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome. Bye.
Thank you.